Welcome! Today, we're mapping out a step-by-step transformation plan for the modern, inclusive classroom. If you're looking to completely ditch that rigid one-size-fits-all teaching style and really build an environment where every single diverse learner thrives, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get right into it. Okay, so let's dive into this. Right now, about 25% of young students, literally 1 in 4, are identified as English learners. That is a massive shift in our educational landscape. And to put that into perspective, it clearly highlights an urgent need. We absolutely cannot rely on a singular, homogeneous approach to teaching anymore. I mean, the classroom just changed, right? So our methods have got to change with it. And that actually brings us to the core thesis of our explainer today. Educator Patrick Dunlop really hits the nail on the head in our source material. He says, individual needs, strengths, and weaknesses must drive instructional and assessment practice. Honestly, the days of rote memorization and cramming for those Friday tests, they're over. They just don't serve our diverse student body anymore. We need to measure deep, long-term understanding that's actually tailored to the human beings sitting right in front of us. Which leads us to a really provocative question, something you might be wondering yourself. How do we assess deep understanding when a student is still learning the language? Think about it for a second. If a student struggles to write a complex essay in English, does that mean they don't understand the underlying science concept? No, of course not. So the real challenge here is, how do we remove that language barrier so it doesn't get in the way of measuring their true intellect and comprehension? To answer that, here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to cover the inclusive classroom shift, scaffolding for English learners, play-based learning strategies, guiding students to inquiry, and assessing with qualitative rubrics. Let's start with Section 1, the inclusive classroom shift, moving from one-size-fits-all to universal design. So, a flexible environment sets the absolute foundation for success. And the bedrock of this shift relies on 2 critical concepts: universal design for learning, or UDL, and differentiated instruction, or DI. Now, they're different but highly complementary. UDL proactively builds an inclusive environment right from the planning stage. It basically assumes learner variability exists and designs flexible goals universally to remove barriers from day one. Differentiated instruction, on the other hand, is responsive. It allows you to look at individual student data and adjust targeted strategies in real time. Think of it like this. You use UDL frameworks to build the house and DI to arrange the furniture for the people actually living in it. Practically speaking, this means deliberately arranging your classroom zones to maximize social interaction and encourage collaborative, inquiry-based language practice. Look at this newcomer flowchart. What's really interesting here is how much it emphasizes nonverbal communication, especially on a student's very first day. Giving a visual tour of the classroom with clearly labeled areas, pairing them with a buddy, using simple picture cards for basic needs like getting a drink of water or using the bathroom. I mean, it's huge. These simple actions instantly lower a newcomer's anxiety and build crucial trust way before any academic demands are even mentioned. Once that welcoming environment is established, we move to Section 2, scaffolding for English learners, focusing on visuals and realia. Okay, let's get into some specific instructional strategies. One of the absolute most effective things you can do is label classroom furniture and materials with dual language visuals. Take this example of a family unit. You don't just put up the English word family on the wall. You display the English word, the Spanish word, familia, and a visual support, like a photo of an actual family. You can even incorporate diverse cultural artifacts into these daily center activities to deepen that connection. Surrounding students with these dual language labels totally accelerates their vocabulary development, but, just as importantly, it really honors their home language. It shows them that their background is an asset, not a deficit. And here's how we scaffold something as common as a small group read aloud. You don't just open a complex text and start reading, right? First, you do a picture walk to boost comprehension before you even read a word. You pre-teach vocabulary using visual supports or real-life objects, realia, to clarify abstract vocabulary. Then during the reading, you might use sticky notes on the cover to ask guiding questions and activate background knowledge. After reading, you use drawing or object sequencing to check what they understood. This whole multi-step process makes challenging texts fully accessible without watering down the concepts at all. Moving right along to Section 3, play-based learning strategies. This is where we make language truly accessible. Play-based learning is essentially the perfect, low-pressure environment for students to apply all that new vocabulary they've been absorbing. Imagine this. You create a superhero-themed dramatic play unit. This allows English learners to safely explore pretend and real-life abilities, especially if you incorporate their personal interests. A student can literally put on a cape and practice expressive language, using words about helping, sharing, and showing kindness. It all happens in a completely natural, super engaging scenario that just melts away the fear of making a mistake. By integrating these play-based centers into your weekly schedule, you're ensuring they get consistent, functional language scaffolds. But here's the catch. To make play-based learning and interactive inquiry actually work, we really have to cut down on traditional lecture time. Passive listening? It is incredibly draining for English learners. We need to limit whole group instruction to just 10 or 15 minutes, tops. Instead, increase those peer-to-peer interactive moments. Do turn and talk activities, and whenever possible, peer students who share the same home language so they can process concepts together first. Bring in that realia to anchor abstract ideas, and use physical movement and songs. And here's a pro tip. Observing all this peer-to-peer interaction and engagement, that serves as a fantastic form of ongoing formative assessment. Next up in Section 4, Guiding Students to Inquiry, the Student Journey. So as students grow their language and academic skills, we really want to build their autonomy. Let's see how this builds, because this gradual release of responsibility applies whether you're teaching kindergarten play centers or guiding high school teachers on transitioning their students to complex research projects. We start with structured instruction. The teacher leads. Then we transition into guided inquiry, where you provide the questions, but the students do the investigating. Finally, the ultimate goal, open inquiry. This is where students generate their own questions based on their personal interests and seek their own answers. You can actually use a simple checklist during these collaborative activities to assess their growing autonomy. It is a deliberate, beautiful journey from passive receiver to independent investigator. Which brings us to the final phase of our roadmap, Section 5, assessing with qualitative rubrics, going beyond the test score. The crucial question here is, how do we actually measure the deep understanding generated by these open inquiry projects? Let's be honest, traditional quantitative scoring uses arbitrary words like all, most, or some. That tells us almost nothing about a student's actual skills. We need a template for moving from test scores to qualitative performance narratives. By incorporating Bloom's taxonomy adjectives, qualitative descriptors like formulates, designs, or analyzes, we can accurately measure cognitive depth and really improve the quality of formative student feedback. And crucially, we can use these qualitative rubrics to track growth in both English and their home language simultaneously. Plus, we have to give students diverse, multimodal ways to demonstrate that mastery. Think about it. A written essay is just one modality, and it often unfairly penalizes English learners. Replacing rote tests with multimodal inquiry assessments, things like multimedia presentations, digital portfolios, or even bilingual presentations, allows students to leverage their individual strengths. If a student understands a complex science concept but expresses it best visually or in their home language, these diverse product choices let them show that deep understanding perfectly. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Managing differentiated instruction and multimodal assessments sounds like an impossible amount of work, right? But our sources highlight some amazing edtech tools that make this incredibly manageable. For process differentiation, which is tailoring how students learn, there's eduide.ai, a free tool for building diverse lesson plans and organizers. And for product differentiation, creating those varied outputs, there's Brisk Teaching, an AI tool that instantly builds rubrics and choice boards. The technology is literally right here to help you pull this inclusive shift off. We have covered quite the roadmap today, from proactive classroom design all the way to empowering multimodal assessments. So I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. What is one specific action you can take this week to transition your own classroom from traditional rote testing to an inclusive, multimodal inquiry model? Seriously, think about it. Take that first step today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.